Well, hi everyone, I'm Brittany. I'm excited you guys were able to come today. I'm excited to be down here talking to you all. A little bit of background about myself. I grew up in Rhode Island. I went to school in upstate New York. I lived out in Colorado. I lived in Pennsylvania for a little bit. So I've been exposed to a number of different types of landscapes. A lot of the time when I was a kid, my parents, we spent a lot of time out on the water. And so I was outside a lot. We'd make long days of it, be outside almost from sunrise to sunset. And so I was always really fascinated as a kid watching the light change or watching parts of nature sort of shift throughout seasons and times of day and things of that nature. I got my undergraduate degree at Union College in upstate New York. I did my graduate work down at UNCG down here. I graduated in 2018 and I've stayed in the area. And so I started to feel for my own practice it was starting to be a little contradictory. My decisiveness to want to work from life and work in the landscape, but at the same time with the factors being different every time I went out, it just felt a little maybe hypocritical of me for what I said I was going after. And so I started working in series, and what I started doing was only painting for the amount of time that lighting or effect basically lasted outside. And so I never knew exactly how long I would have. I started going out to one particular field, and I would literally paint from sunrise to sunset. Every time the lighting situation changed, I would put up a new panel and record the time on the back. So some of the paintings were only about 5 minutes, some of them could last up to 2 hours, depending on how consistent that lighting situation or the weather situation. I paint in rain, snow, all different seasons. I paint throughout the whole year. I'd figure out ways to sort of protect myself from inclement weather. I'd use my car to sort of block snow or rain. And the first day I did about 6 paintings. It was in the winter time, and then by the end of the project I was doing up to 19 paintings a day as I started to get more familiar with the space, and it became much more intuitive. I was able to build a rhythm where felt like I could put myself in the same rhythm of the changes that were actually happening in front of me. Some of the main themes, I'm looking at time, looking at change, looking at familiarity, thinking about firsthand experiences. Also this idea of mass imagery, especially with that larger project that I started with, having hundreds of paintings. They were about 11 by 14 inch paintings, so they're a little bigger than these. But having them all sort of displayed as a group, not thinking about them just individually, but what it means to see a mass amount of imagery. We're used to seeing that on Google and Instagram and Facebook and all of these sort of digital formats where we're saturated with all these images, but how well are we really processing what they mean, both on an individual level, but on a whole level as well. And some of it also was influenced maybe by some of my traveling to different places and thinking about what I could research about a place beforehand, and then the difference of actually spending time there and painting there. And all of these places, I never researched them before I went. My relationship with these spaces is formed by the act of painting. But I think the history of my travel and living in different places just made me more aware to be open to the unexpected and to really be able to invest in places that you're not sure what you're gonna find. So the paintings, the resolution or sort of the completedness of the paintings is an indication of how long that particular lighting situation or maybe the weather situation lasted. So as soon as I feel like it's not the same subject anymore, or that the changes that are happening in front of me are too great that I can't continue, I switch the panel. And it's trying to give an indication of time as well, and like what it means for humans to be able to try to keep up with changes. We are used to having phones to like freeze things, stop things. We have videos, we can go back and we can rewatch it again. And all of those technological advances are really great and amazing. But then I'm going back to the idea of what it means to just be a human and think about how much we can take in a certain amount of time, and sort of the fragility of humans and their interaction and able to comprehend nature and change and time and all of that when we don't have technology to maybe help us out with that. So, I mean, painting is one of the oldest mediums in art history, and thinking about how we think about painting, but also how we think about nature and landscape. Our relationship to nature has also changed over time. We're not as reliant maybe on it ourselves personally in our daily lives, and so the way we look at it and the way we experience it is also very different than even 50 to 100 years ago. They're all chronological, so the order, so there's little numbers on the back. As I paint, I number all the panels. On some of the larger series, I'll do the time frame too, so I know exactly how long it took me to do each one, but they all stay in chronological order. So I think that as I've explored different types of landscapes, that when it's more monochromatic, there's more surprises that happen to me with the changes in terms of the composition that I end up with based on how light and shadow patterns fall across it and forms that pop out that I didn't realize. Again, particularly with the rocks, things look very flat at certain times, or certain areas look very flat, and then as the light is changing, all of a sudden there's forms that pop out that I never would have noticed or expected before. And so I think that it allows more variation in composition. It also allows a little bit more of that, again, that relationship between abstraction and representation to come out, because you're less maybe focused on the actual object and more focused on those shape shifts that are happening.